Looks
Good.
good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, thank you for inviting me to give this talk today. Today, I'll be talking about image tagging in Symbiota and also how to link and cite images using Symbiota. So the work that I'll be presenting today is part of the Big B project, which is a multi-institution NSF-funded project for bee digitization. So most of the examples that I'll present today are related to bee specimens, but the ideas and methods I'm presenting are applicable to all types of organisms. So here I have a figure from a preprint by Groom et al. Showing how the number of images of specimens in natural history collections has been changing over time. And you'll notice that this y-axis is on a log scale. So these are really quite big increases. And these images are part of what's called the extended specimen. So the physical specimen, and then also the digital record and extended data associated with that specimen, such as ecological and morphological data and the conservation status of the specimen, for example. So why take images of specimens? One reason is that it can help facilitate specimen digitization. So here I have this photo of a hawk moth next to its labels. And with this photo, it makes it really easy to transcribe the labels and to check the labels really easily. And you can even potentially use machine learning for the label transcription. We can also use images to measure traits like bee body size. So for bees, the distance between the wing pads is a proxy for body size, and we call this intertegular distance. And for my postdoc research, I'm measuring intertegular distance from images of bee specimens to try to understand how bee body size has been changing over time in response to climate change. And I won't talk any more about this project now, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about it later. Images of specimens can also be used for species or genus identification. In plants, photos of herbarium specimens have been successfully used for automated species identification, where you use machine learning to identify the plant to genus or to species. And we're not at this place yet with bees, but as we get more and more high resolution images of bees, we might be able to do automated species identification with them as well. And finally, we can use images of specimens to make 3D models. So here I have a set of 3D images that have been used to make this GIF of this carpenter bee. And we can also use these images to make 3D models. And 3D models are great because they allow anyone, anywhere to look at a specimen up close without the specimen having to leave its home or without the person having to leave their home. And here at UCSB, we're using these 3D models for research. So we're getting these volumetric measurements from the 3D images and the 3D models that we're making from them. So hopefully I've convinced you that it's useful to take images of specimens in natural history collections. Now I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that come up when we try to database these images. So one challenge is finding the type of image that you want in a database. So to go back to my bee body size project, for that project, I need dorsal shots of specimens to measure that intertegular distance. And so I need to be able to search for dorsal shots only from a database. A second challenge is linking sets of images and citing them. So if you're publishing a scientific paper that uses images of specimens, those images are going to have usually pretty large file sizes, and so it's going to be potentially impossible to include them in the supplement of the paper. And so we need a way to cite them and link them together if there are multiple images. And this problem is really exemplified with sets of 3D images and 3D models, where you often have hundreds of photos of a single specimen. If you upload those photos onto Symbiota or onto GBIF, they go up into the ether, and it's really hard to get them back as a single package. So today I'll be answering two questions. So first, how does a researcher find the type of image that they're looking for in Symbiota? And then how does a researcher find and cite linked images? And by answering these questions, we're hoping that we can make image sharing easier and fairer. And for the Big B project, we're taking 3 different types of images. So the first type is dorsal images of specimens next to their labels. The second type are standard view images of specimens in the lateral orientation, a frontal orientation, and the dorsal orientation. And then sets of 3D images of specimens. And we want to be able to search for each of these 3 different types of images separately in Symbiota. And to do this, we're using first 2 terms. So subject part. Here, this is the full body of the specimen in this photo here, and this is what we're calling habitus. And then second, subject orientation, or which way the bee is facing. And these are both Audubon core terms. And so they get exported with the Darwin Core archive CSV file, so that if someone's using GBIF, they can search for these different types of images in GBIF. And then we implement the image tags by changing the file name for the photo. So here I have an example file name of this photo right here. So you'll see it starts with the catalog number of the specimen. 2x is the magnification that the photo was taken at. And then we have a subject part, which is habitus, or the full body, and the subject orientation. Here I have another example. So with this photo, our subject part is head and the subject orientation is frontal. And again, we've added it to the catalog number here, so we have the subject part and orientation. And we've actually used a shorthand for this. So head frontal gets shortened to HEF, but I'm showing you the longhand version here just so that it's easier to see. And then we upload these photos onto our Symbiota portal, which I have a screenshot of right here. This is the Big B library. And there's a batch process script that's run on the back end that extracts these image tags from the file name so that we can now search for these different image types in Symbiota. And so here I have an example where you can search for all specimens that have full body shots in the lateral orientation. I've talked about the subject part and orientation, but we've also implemented image tags for 3D images and for images with labels as well. So if you just want to search for specimens with labels, you can do that with an image tag. So how does a researcher find the type of image that they're looking for? The answer that we've come up with is image tagging. So the next question I'll talk about is, how does a researcher find and cite linked images? So here we have this set of 3D images of this carpenter bee. Say we make a 3D model with these images and we analyze it for a paper. We want to be able to cite this set of images. So we want to be able to link them all together and put them onto a data hosting platform that we can cite. And so to do this, we are using GitHub. So for our 3D image sets, we're uploading the full set of 3D images to a single repository on GitHub as a zip file. And that zip file is small enough to be able to easily fit on the repository. And then the name of the repository is the catalog number of the specimen. And the reason we chose GitHub is because it's really nicely integrated with Zenodo. So any GitHub repository is citable using Zenodo. So we can publish this set of 3D images on Zenodo and get a digital object identifier, or a DOI, that we can then cite in our paper. And then we link this Zenodo publication back to Symbiota. So here I have a screenshot of an occurrence record for a bee specimen on our Symbiota collection for UCSB. And you'll see this related occurrences box here has this link to this Zenodo publication. And related occurrences is a field in the Darwin Core archive. And so this gets exported to GBIF. And so if you're searching for 3D image sets on GBIF, you can now find these 3D images on GBIF. So how does a researcher find and cite linked images? The answer that we've come up with is to use GitHub and Zenodo. So hopefully I've convinced you with these simple tweaks. We can make it a little bit easier to share and to find images of specimens from natural history collections. Now I'm going to talk about some of the future directions with image sharing. So a first future direction is how to go back and add image tags to file names of photos that have already been taken of specimens. So here I have 3 photos of insect specimens that I took from the Igdysis Symbiota portal, and they don't have any image tags in their file name. And so these photos are going to be harder to find if a researcher wants to find a dorsal shot, for example, or a lateral shot, for example. A second future direction is image copyright. So here at UCSB, we publish all our photos under a public domain license so that anyone can use them, because we really want our photos to be used for research. And this is especially important when it comes to machine learning applications, where you might have thousands of photos that go into training a model. And if the photos are copyrighted, even if you just have to cite the person that took the photo, that can just make it prohibitive to use those photos for a machine learning application. And then the final future direction that I'll talk about is image hashing. So hash is a a unique string that's associated with an image that gets registered in an online database. So it's a string that's generated based on the bits and pixels in an image. And if the image is changed, the hash will also get changed. So here I have this top photo's been photoshopped, so the color has changed. This would change the hash slightly. And then this bottom photo, the size had been made smaller, so it's a lower quality photo. And for this, the hash would also change slightly. And so this is a way to version images and link them together. So with that, I'd like to thank my postdoc advisor, Katja Seltman, Jorrit Pullen from Global Biotic Interactions, the Symbiota Support Hub, including Katie Pearson, Lindsay Walker, and Andrew Johnson, and the National Science Foundation, which funded the Big B project. And with that, I will take any questions. Yes.
Yeah, so what you're doing is naming the file, that the file name has all the information in it, and then you're extracting it out of the file name, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the tagging information is included in the file name. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Hi, sorry, I just had a quick question. Are you guys adding any data to, or any metadata to the images before you upload it? Like when you go like I think it's like an EXIF, so that like when you download the image and you open it, it already has keywords in it, or are you just uploading it blank with just the file name?
We're just uploading it blank. Like we're not uploading. I think you might be able to get the metadata from the photo.
Okay.
I think I've done that before, although I'm not 100% sure about that, but we're just uploading the photos and the orientation and the subject part. They're just in the file name.
Okay. Does the metadata, like I think it's called the EXIF data. I'm not quite sure. Somebody else can correct me. Does that get deleted when it gets put online? Does it get wiped out? And then so if somebody else downloads it, it's gone. Is that why y'all are doing it? Or why did you choose the approach to go to file name versus metadata?
So I don't think it gets deleted. Although again, not 100% sure about that. But I think like the subject part and orientation that wouldn't be included in that file, right? Because we're not putting it there, we're just putting it in the file name. Makes sense.
Yeah. I did have the same question basically. So what Silas, I hope I pronounced that name right, but says is there's two kinds of metadata in photos already. One is the EXIF data, which is the technical data. So when a camera takes a picture, it records which kind of ISO was used, what kind of aperture the lens was, etc., etc. There's also the option to embed so-called XMP, Extensible Metadata Platform, into the image files, which is an Adobe standard developed by Adobe but widely used in the industry. And I mean, maybe the file naming convention is just easier to use. But what I see, if Symbiota was able to harvest the XMP data, then theoretically that could be much more widely used in all different kind of organisms. For example, I mean, you might only be interested in a limited set of images that you routinely take, like the head, the body, the front, the side, etc. But in other organisms, there might be a lot of other interesting aspects that could be encoded in the metadata, and there's software. So, for example, Lightroom or so to do that. So, if those tags could be read directly from the file, that would potentially be great. But I assume that this requires a lot of additional programming in Symbiota, and that's probably why it wasn't done.
Yeah, Yeah, and I think,
I could provide some input here. It's
yeah,
useful. So the reason why it's being added in this workflow here, there's lots of different workflows where you could do it. But in this workflow here, the images are being loaded into the system before they even touch Symbiota. So it's a batch process of processing it and creating thumbnails and this and that. And basically when it's in the file name, you could just write a query and it's real easy to actually create those tags through that stored procedure. And that's how it's set up there. But the main reason why it's the image tag in this workflow, it's because the folks that are doing the imaging, and there's a lot of different imaging teams, it's easier. We've been told it's easier to add those tags in the file name across all the different partners than it is to add it as part of the metadata. But the metadata that could totally be used too, and if that's one of the workflows where people are doing it, it's actually not that hard to implement.
yeah, I guess the way our workflow works is we usually have our technicians that are taking the photos, they'll add the tags to our file name, or for some, like the 3D images, I'll add it programmatically, which is really easy to do if you're just changing the file name. So I think from our end, it's just like an easy way to do it. Do you have another question, Frank?
Oh, I wanted to comment on it. I think what you're doing is great, so I didn't want to criticize it, and I think it's fantastic to see this being implemented in Symbiota. And of course, Ed knows that he and I have been talking about this before, and the metadata stuff that I'm pushing for, which I'd like to implement in my Lichen stuff. But so I didn't mean to be too critical. I think it's great what you're doing, and I also find this 3D stuff fascinating. I've been experimenting with some of that for the Lichens as well. So congrats. So I didn't mean to be critical, you know.
Yeah. Scylla?
Oh, yeah, I just same what Frank said. It's pronounced Chilla, by the way. It's Hungarian. Sorry. Weird spelling. Yeah, no, I think it's great. I was just asking because something that I've been trying to play around with was we store a lot of the data for our images, or the data associated with images, in a database before we upload it onto Cernak. And so I've been playing around with trying to batch edit the metadata of our photos before we put it up. But I can also, in the script, change it to the title name. I do know that, I just have one more question about that. I do know that Cernak in particular, I don't know about the other portals. We had just, Katie was nice enough to add some tags for microscope photos versus stacked focus photos, because we wanted to distinguish them. I guess this is a question for everybody involved. Is there a way, if we add those tags to the titles of the images, for that to then do the same thing? So then it will automatically tag it on Cernak as stacked focus or microscope, or do we still need to be doing that individually as we upload the photos? So I think that's more a question for Katie and Ed.
Yeah.
I do not know the answer to that question, or I would answer it.
Okay. It's okay. I was just curious. Go ahead.
Ed, do you want to weigh in on that?
I'm sorry, I had to leave for a second. What was it again?
No, it's okay. So there are tags now, thanks to Katie, on Cernak for stacked focus photos and microscope images. If we add those tags to our image titles when we upload them, will it work similarly where it can be matched to a tag so that we don't have to individually tag the photos?
Yes. So when you upload it, there's actually a number of different workflows where you could automatically upload. So I suggest actually we meet and talk about those details,
Okay.
because we would have to actually figure out what tags you're doing, and you have to coordinate the tags with your codes and all that. But yes, totally doable.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Beth?
Yeah, a couple comments. I once got into like this swirly loop and of like a metaphysical thing about trying to like, well, there's so much metadata that you can add. And I was years ago, like, why don't we just add all of the data to the images and then we can, there's some software to look at it. But then I realized that's what Symbiota is. It's a better user interface than trying to get software to look the metadata. But I'm still can't get that out of my mind, exactly what Chilla was saying. Because so I've used Lightroom to add taxa to all our specimens, and it doesn't make it through to the Symbiota interface when you, because we uploaded through another, so through Cyverse, so I don't see any of the copyright information or any of that within Symbiota, but when I download the image, it's still there. So my tags that I've added, and I've just added taxa, and I did it with Adobe Lightroom before doing it because it helped me to have just the species of my plant. So I'm kind of curious if anybody's ever thought that way, like could you write all the label data? But and also I realized we have labels, right? So if you see the image in Symbiota, then you see the nice, you have it. It's just kind of redundant to have it in the metadata, but somehow I can't get that out of my head. What Frank was saying, like you can put all kinds of cool stuff in there. You could, but I don't even know what's the use of doing it. Anyway, I don't really have a question. It's just if any, I guess there is a question. Chilla, what software did you use to batch?
I've been playing with R because I know a lot of
Just
people, yeah, R script, R programming. I was playing around with it because actually, you're right. There is the label data. The reason why I was looking into it is because I was nervous about the images that don't have the label data. So I'm talking about like habitat and like in situ photos that we have been trying to do a better job of collecting and associating with the records. And like microscope images and like stacked focus images. I just had this concern of, oh no, what happens if this image gets disassociated, or someone finds it on the internet, like using some like image search. I wanted that data still to be there for people to be like, oh, this is what this is. But then I actually work with a lot of rare plants that we want to protect. And I started to back away from it because I was like, well, then if the metadata doesn't get scraped, the image is protected on Cernic. So then if they take an image and they download it and I've embedded, the GPS location and more and like what the identification is, then someone can use that to like bypass the security perhaps. And so that's how I go back and forth. But I've been trying to use R to do that because again, I mean, I think Python might be a little bit better for it, but I know that all of my colleagues use R. So
I can also comment on this. I'm using a program called ID Imager, and actually it supports a Darwin Core implementation of the extensible metadata platform, so XMP. And here at the Viking Herbarium, we are using, or we have developed for the global grant, this program called BCR Watcher from Daryl, who developed this. And it allows you to embed that same metadata into the image files during the acquisition workflow. And we are routinely doing this. And I think it's a good idea to have at least the collector and the collector number and possibly the catalog number embedded in the files. And that's exactly why we're kind of doing this. So it's an option that people can use already using that program that I just wanted to mention.
Right, but the beauty of the Symbiota software is it does that. It has a really good interface and it's nice. So will other portals groups have this ability to search that way, besides not just the bee people, Ed or Katie?
Search
Yeah,
by the tags you're saying, or
yeah, the tags, is that
Yeah.
already in there? It's not.
that's already built in, and there's a lot of different ways where you could tag the images and put it in there. So it's not searching the metadata that's embedded in the image, though. It's searching in the database. And the benefit of having a database is you could index it, and you could do these really quick searches where if it's in the metadata, and just a comment on putting it in the metadata of the image. I think it is a good idea putting catalog number, collector number in there, especially if you don't see that information as part of the image, if the label's not there. And this is something we've talked about maybe automating, but one of the problems is, let's say if you put the, if you embed the metadata when the label's transcribed and then it's annotated, or the name changes, or there's a mistake or something like that, you have to make sure whatever programs are out there managing it, as far as doing the data management aspects, it updates that information too. And if there is, you know, if there's situations or use cases where people really rely on that metadata and want that metadata, rather than getting that metadata from like a Darwin Core archive or a GBIF, where that information is really indexed, then, you know, the community would move more towards embedding it totally in that image. So it is a neat idea to think about.
I just want to second that. I think what I personally also find really useful is once the metadata is in the image, it's essentially like you have a label on your specimen. So imagine if you have, if you didn't have a label, but just maybe a number or something on the shelf with your specimen, then it would be a pain. You would always have to go to the database to look it up. So now if you share images amongst different groups and you have that metadata embedded with the image, then the metadata travels with the image. And so that's quite a nice advantage of having it in the image. But of course, like Ed says, there's different software out there, and different software has different ways of doing things. So even though you might have it embedded in your image file, it's not necessarily always easy to get to it. And like currently, Symbiota doesn't read that embedded metadata. So maybe at some point in the future, but who knows? But at least software like Lightroom or generally software that can read XMP is able to see that metadata, which is kind of a nice touch.
So there's also, I just want to know, as far as tagging images go, there is, I'm not sure if it's activated in all the portals, but there is a batch tagger that was been developed over the last few months, so you could actually batch tag the images too, and that's part of the image search tool. So but that's also still in refinement as far as trying it out, but in the B portal it is activated.
So I don't see image search in the Cernak portal. Is that not, am I supposed to be able to find that? Or the tag thing?
There is an image search tool. I don't know if the tag thing's activated. I would have to look. But anyone that has like use cases where they want to start tagging images, I recommend we actually talk about those workflows specifically. We could either meet with you individually or in small groups, and we could talk about the different workflows of how to tag the images in batch. But in the user interface, you could do it image by image. But the other thing is the tags also have to be set up within the data files. So you can't use like any tag. It's not like keywords.
I really think we're beyond. I mean, I've already taken 80,000 pictures and I just can't, you know, my time is done with that. I just can't see going back. I mean, I guess you could search for one collector.
Yeah.
And if you could batch that collector's name, that would be great. But you already do that. I mean, that's what Cernak
No,
does.
I mean,
already, you know
no,
what I mean? Like,
tagging
you
would
could
be like
search-
along the lines of saying, okay, this image has a label that's handwritten, or this image has a label that's typewritten, or this is you know, the different views of the organism or close-ups and blah blah blah. things that would be useful. And that information is not yet being pushed out. Those tags are not yet being pushed out to GBIF, but they will. And then we don't know how the community is going to use them. But yeah.
I was just gonna show Beth where the image tags are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
that would be great. Thank you.
in most portals,
Thanks.
it's under the image search. So when you go into image search, and this is when you're specifically searching for images, not specimens necessarily. And they will be linked to certain scientific names based on the specimen data. But then if it has been tagged, you'll be able to select any of these tags and search along those. Granted, like what you have been saying, it's not like you've tagged all of 100,000 of your specimens. And probably most herbaria haven't. And it kind of depends on the use case. Like, do you think people are going to need to search for a specific type of image? Maybe if you have a bunch of close-ups of seeds, those would be really useful to tag in batch because that's a very unique herbarium specimen image. But if you just have an herbarium specimen image, that's kind of standard protocol for something like the Cernic portal. And then if you just look at a single specimen record, although I don't know if there are images on this one. Yeah, there are. Okay. So then when you look in the images tab, you'd be able to see where you can tag all of these particular tag types. And those, like Ed was saying, those can be customized in the database of the portal. So just like Colleen had a bunch that were related to the specific orientation of the specimen, if a portal community got together and said, hey, we have a bunch of pictures of seeds, a bunch of pictures of habitat, and a bunch of pictures of microscope slides, maybe we should make sure that all three of those tags are available through this tagging interface.
That's really cool. That's really powerful. Because like one thing is if there's like, I don't know that there's the data generalizations field is the one I said, okay, that's kind of mine. It's the curatorial. It's the only weird thing. And I have different things. And one thing is like a certain attractive specimen that I want to use to show somebody like, oh, that's a really pretty one. I'm always kind of looking for those. Something like that would be good. But I have to just like shout out to the original Symbiota database that you did. I just like love this database. And I think, so much of these things that you could get with the metadata, you have already done it through the interface of the database itself, for me anyway, because all the label data we transcribed was a huge effort. And so now we have it. It's all, like you said, it's all indexed and it's a beautiful searchable database. So, but yeah, anyway, that's.
And if we have the time, I could show the batch image tool within the B portal.
Please.
Or do we have other stuff to do, Katie, or
No, go for it.
Lindsay? Okay, great. Do I have the power? I do. All right, so this is within the B portal. And again, we're in the image search tool. And this is where you could type in a family, scientific name, or you could go after images from certain photographers. And in this tool, you could search the tags, but you could also say with or without a tag. So you could say with. In most of the other portals right now, you could only search the images that have tags. So you could search lateral view, or you could search image contains a label. However, you could also say without images or without a tag, without a specific tag, or you could say any tag. It's taking a little bit longer just because there's more images out there without tags. And there's 1.2 million images without tags, but now you could say, you have this little editing thing here, and you could say, okay, I want to tag some images, like label contains image. And then there you could go and select the ones that have labels. So, I mean, it's it's still work. So.
Thanks, Ed. That'll definitely make things faster once people have an idea of what they want to tag. And once we've finished the tool and released it into the wild, so to speak.
So is there a way to limit the collection in the image search?
Yes, yeah, you can limit it to a single collection or multiple collections. That's part of.
It's a
I can
little
share
bit
my screen
hidden.
again.
Oh yeah, you're gonna do it. Great.
Yep. So right here, if you select image type, it's doing all images. So that's field images and specimen images. If you select specimen images only, then you get it pull down where you could select which images you want. And you click your image. Now, when you're doing the batch tagging, you could only tag the images that you have permissions to edit. So you could only tag your own images. You can't tag other people's images unless they make you an editor.
I'm really grateful. That was great. I didn't know about how to search that. I thought, this software I've been using it a long time, but I haven't mastered that. Didn't know that. I didn't do many image searches, so. Yay.
Any other questions for Colleen or for the Symbiota team?
I
Really
posted
cool.
a question in the, oh, go ahead. Yeah, I see that my question is already answered, so I'll just be quiet. Go ahead.
Oh, Beth, you're muted. I think you're trying to say something though.
Thank you. Thank you. I once found that I was able to edit someone else's, it was a University of Wisconsin herbarium. Like it said, oh, you can edit this occurrence record. We were linked. It was a duplicate. Was that on purpose or is that a problem? Should I report that?
That may
No,
be- Oh, go ahead, Ed.
it depends what you edited, and it depends on the situation. So there's some collections allow public edits, and in those situations, people that are not official editors of that collection, they get to do an edit, but it's not applied. It's thrown into a versioning table as an unapplied edit. And then the collection manager can pull those up and say, okay, I approve, or they can pull up by certain users and say, I trust this person and I approve it. So it's one of the workflows.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I did not edit it. I just was surprised to have the option.
And if you're not an editor, you can't edit the taxonomic information. You can't change the scientific name. There'll be a little red thing. It said you can't change that. That's a high level edit.
Yeah, I saw that exactly as you said.
But all the other occurrence fields, the majority of the occurrence fields, you could edit. It's just not going to be applied right away until it's reviewed.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, thank you so much, Colleen. This was really informative and generated some great discussion.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for having me.
We'll see everybody next year. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone.
One question, the next one won't be on the first, it'll be in the second week.
Correct. It won't be on New Year's Day.
Check our website for the exact schedule once we figure it out.
All right, thanks.
Bye, everybody.